All set? All right. We're going to do our little reading from the shorter discourse to Malunkyaputta. And so put your hands in Hopshing. If you remember, he was the one who had all the questions about infinity, finiteness, and stuff to the Buddha. So, if the Blessed One knows the world is finite, the world is infinite, the soul is the same as the body, the soul is one thing and the body another. After death, a Tathagata exists. After death, a Tathagata does not exist. If the Blessed One knows after death, a Tathagata both exist and does not exist, let the Blessed One declare that to me. If the Blessed One knows after death, a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, let the Blessed One declare that to me. If the Blessed One does not know either after death the Tathagata both exists and does not exist, or after death the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, then it is straightforward for one who does not know and does not see to say, I do not know, I do not see. And the Buddha says to Malunkyaputta that, did I ever say to you the stuff about the finite and the infinite? And he goes on to say, if anyone should say thus, I will not lead the holy life under the Blessed One, until the Blessed One declares to me the world is eternal, or after death the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, that would still remain undeclared by the Tathagata, and meanwhile that person would die. Suppose, Malunkyaputta, a man were wounded by an arrow thickly smeared with poison, and his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, brought a surgeon to treat him. The man would say, I will not let the surgeon pull out this arrow until I know whether the man who wounded me was a noble, or a Brahmin, or a merchant, or a worker. And he would say, I will not let the surgeon pull out this arrow until I know the name and the clan of the man who wounded me. Until I know whether the man who wounded me was tall or short or of middle height, until I know whether the man who wounded me was dark or brown or golden skin, until I know whether the man who wounded me lives in such a village or town or city, until I know whether the bow that wounded me was a longbow or a crossbow, until I know whether the bowstring that wounded me was a fiber or a reed or a sinew or a hemp or bark, until I know whether the shaft that wounded me was wild or cultivated, until I know with what kind of feathers the shaft that wounded me was fitted, whether those of a vulture or a heron or a hawk or a peacock or a stork, until I know with what kind of sinew the shaft that wounded me was bound, whether that of an ox or a buffalo or a deer or a monkey, until I know that kind of arrowhead it was that wounded me, and whether spiked or razor-tipped, or curved, or barbed, or calf-toothed, or lancer-shaped. All of this would not be known to that man, and meanwhile he would die. So too, Malunkyaputta, if anyone should say thus, I will not lead the holy life under the Blessed One until the Blessed One declares to me, the world is eternal, or after the death of a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, that would still remain undeclared by the Tathagata. Meanwhile, that person would die. And finally, we skip around a little bit then. Therefore, Malunkyaputta, remember that I have left undeclared as undeclared. And remember what I have declared as declared, and what I have left undeclared. The world is eternal, I have left undeclared. The world is not eternal, I have left undeclared. The world is finite, I have left undeclared. The world is infinite, I have left undeclared. The soul is the same as the body, I have left undeclared. The soul is one thing and the body another, I have left undeclared. After the death, a Tathagata exists, I have left undeclared. After death, a Tathagata does not exist, I have left undeclared. After death, a Tathagata both exists and does not exist, I have left undeclared. And after death, a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, I have left undeclared. Why have I left that undeclared? Because it is unbeneficial. It does not belong to the fundamentals of the holy life. It does not lead to the disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. That is why I have left it undeclared. And what have I declared? This is suffering, I have declared. This is the origin of suffering, I have declared. This is the cessation of suffering, I have declared. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering, I have declared. Why have I declared that? Because it is beneficial. It belongs to the fundamentals of the holy life. It leads to the disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, and to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. That is why I have declared it. Thus ends the reading. That was a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but I wanted to read it all, or most of it. I have been, I've been up in Muskegon for the last 7 or 8 weeks. That's where I was raised. I haven't lived there for 55 years. So I went back for the summer. I'm living with my brother, and we're just kind of enjoying. We're both retired. I feel kind of guilty sometimes talking to all of you people who are not retired yet. I'm sorry. Retirement is great. It's wonderful. That doesn't have anything to do with the talk. I'm just telling you, when you get there, it's wonderful. But I've had a great deal of free time this summer, and I've enjoyed it. And I've had a great deal of sitting in solitary. Not, I wouldn't say formal meditation, more or less sitting and just contemplating. And I do this a lot. In fact, I do it almost every day if the weather cooperates. I do it by Lake Michigan, where I grew up. Now, it's been a summer of quiet reflection, and I've enjoyed the summer immensely. And I know that it will end, and I will come back here, probably sometime after Labor Day. 3 things, however, during all this time that I've been sitting there and contemplating and thinking, watching the lake, 3 things came out when I was looking at what I was going to talk about. 3 things that stood out really plainly to me. And the first thing was the importance of the Sangha. The 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Well, the Sangha to me is very important. And it's important in my practice and in my following of the path. The second thing that stood out was that metaphysical questions are probably less important to me than they have ever been. I'm not saying they're unimportant. I'm saying they're unknowable, but they're not unimportant. But they mean less to me now than they used to. And the third thing I've learned is that right here, right now, this is all we've got. This is the only thing we have. It's right here, right now. And you've all heard about that. I know you all know about it. But being aware of the here and the now grows every time we sit in quiet reflection, in my opinion. I think it does for me anyway. When you sit, the more you live here, now. The more you practice, the more you're here, now. So going back to the importance of the Sangha, for me, I need others. I need others to help me, to share my practice with me. It's easier, frankly, for me when I'm around others and talking about it, doing it with others. So I get a lot out of the companionship or the group, the Sangha. I think I'm a relatively self-disciplined person, but I'm not a real self-disciplined person. But the Sangha helps me with my self-discipline, with my discipline. And that's an important part because it keeps me going. And what I have noticed, while I said I was doing a lot of sitting out at the lake and contemplating anything, my usual morning meditations kind of declined a little bit when I was up in Muskegon because I knew I was going to go out to Lake Michigan. And I kind of missed that. And I need the Sangha. When I'm active in the Sangha, I kind of hold to that morning meditation every morning. So the Sangha helps me with my discipline. It helps me with my meditation. It helps me with knowing things about what we're trying to do. There's kind of a sense of responsibility that you have when you're part of a Sangha or part of a group. You feel responsible that you do your part and everybody else will do their part, and that's generally the way it works. One of the other things was that in talking to a lot of you, it helps me to interpret what we're saying. It helps me to understand or to reinforce what we're saying, what this path is. And if I pay attention, you all will probably tell me what I need to know. We grow, and our thinking grows when we're part of a Sangha and we're part of listening to what other people are interpreting. And the fellowship of the path is readily available. And we have this Sangha here, but we're all part of a greater Sangha, first the Korean Sangha and then the world Sangha of our tradition. The Sangha is first and foremost a reminder for me of what we are attempting to do. And what are we attempting to do? Well, we're attempting to do no harm. We're attempting to cultivate the wholesome, the good. And we're attempting to purify the mind. And that all is helped by the Sangha, by the group. And only in this present moment can we do these things that are helping us. Only in this, and I have to keep remembering that. The Sangha shows me the path. And it's easier to tread the path when I know the path and when I have others who are treading it with me. And the second thing I realized was that the metaphysical questions are probably less important to me than I've ever been before. And I've said that. I'm sorry. I don't mean to repeat it. Our path does not require faith in an all-powerful creator. I don't say there is no powerful creator or anything. I don't know. I'm unaware of that. I don't know. Our path is not blind faith, but there is faith in our path. But the Buddha tells us to interpret for ourselves, for our own experience, what we go through. But don't just accept the word. The Buddha said, don't accept what I say because I'm the Buddha. Try it yourself. Try it on. See what fits. If it works and it's wholesome, then it's good. There's a purity and a grace in doing good for the sake of goodness. And that's what I get with this metaphysical stuff. Doing good because you fear some sort of retribution or some sort of hell or some sort of revenge or whatever you want to call it. If you don't meet, you're going to meet with unpleasantness if you do bad in a lot of people's beliefs. And I don't have any problem with that. But it seems to me to be more pure to do good for the sake of goodness than to do good because I fear retribution of some sort. And I keep that in mind, and it doesn't really matter if there's an afterlife or not, if you lead a good life now. The Buddha tells us that if you lead a good life, the afterlife will be good. And if there is no afterlife, you'll be happier now. And I kind of go along with it. I kind of see that. So what happens after life, after this physical form goes away? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know because I think it is unknowable. You can't experiment with the metaphysical. You can experiment with the solid, with the form, but you can't experiment with the metaphysical. You can't, because there's nothing tangible there. Now, I've talked to people, I've talked to family, I've talked to my wife, and they believe in an afterlife. And who am I to say that they're wrong? I don't know, and they don't criticize me as much because of my Buddhist leanings now. But it's just unimportant now, as I see it, if there's a life after death or not, because what I'm trying to do is live the life now, here, that is good, for the sake of goodness. And I do believe that it's very important to respect all beliefs of other people, all religions, I may have told this story. If I did, forgive me, but I'll tell it one more time. My sister and I, we talk a lot, and we talk a lot about life and afterlife and Buddhism and Catholicism. She's a very staunch Catholic, and she said to me, goes back about 3 or 4 years ago, in one of our conversations, she said, Greg, I don't think you respect my opinion. And it kind of gave me pause because I respect everybody's opinion. I thought. But I wasn't respecting her opinion about what she believed in. And I had to catch myself. And I found that I was thinking my opinion was the only opinion or the right opinion. Everybody's opinion is their opinion. Now, living here, right now, that's been the third thing that I focused on, because when I'm sitting at Lake Michigan on the beach and I'm just watching the waves and the green and the dunes and all that, you're right there. You're right now. You're right here. And that's a good thing to practice while you're meditating. Be here. Be now. Now, we don't know exactly what's on the other side of this life. So if we don't know what's over there, shouldn't we be focused on what we're doing now, just to make sure we're doing the right thing now? If there is or if there is not a life after death, if there is or is not, we should do the same thing regardless. It doesn't matter if there is or there's not. You do good for goodness sake. You do good because it makes you feel better. Well, again, what do we mean by an afterlife? Well, if you're Catholic or Christian or Jew, you're Muslim, you have a soul, and that soul goes into the afterlife. Well, we don't necessarily believe in a soul as Buddhists, but there's karmic energy that goes on after life in our tradition. And isn't that an afterlife? I don't know. Somebody else can answer that for me. I mean, you talk about the Buddha had thousands of lives before, so he didn't just end up going away when his form existed. But he says, and I understand, I think a little bit of what he's saying. He says, is the Buddha after death? He says the Buddha is not the Buddha after death. But the Buddha is not the Buddha after death. So he doesn't tell us what I want to know. I have to figure that out for myself. And that's why we meditate. We figure that stuff out for ourselves, and then we act on it ourselves. Now, much has changed in these last 10, 15 years. Actually, since I started coming around here, much has changed for me. Now, I don't always live in the present. I try to, and I do a lot better than I used to, but I don't always live in the present. But it's much stronger than it used to be, this living of the present. Now, the do no harm is much more inclusive today for me, because I think because of my Buddhist friends here helping me, I think the do no harm is much more inclusive. It just doesn't include people I know. It includes everybody. It includes the environment. I don't think nearly as much as an afterlife, because I realize it doesn't impact my present moment. And if somebody says, well, it impacts my present moment because if I do something wrong, then I'm going to suffer afterward. Well, I don't agree with that necessarily. I just think you do good for goodness sake. Life lives right here, right now, or it doesn't live anywhere at all. I know there's no future, there's no past, there's only right now. But you can plan for the future, and that means right now you do something that's good for the future, and everybody should plan a little bit. I mean, if you want to retire like me, you better start planning now about where you're going to get the money to retire right now. So you can live in the future, or you can live in the present and plan for the future, but you're not going to live in the future. The only thing that's certain in life, and the only thing that's certain in life is death. Now, we've heard the story, the only thing certain is death and taxes. Well, taxes aren't. I know a lot of very well-off people who haven't paid taxes in a long time, but they're going to die. Now, that's the fact that the only thing that is certain is that we're going to die. It's not bad news. It's just what is. It's just news. Now, our response to what goes beyond in this moment is the important aspect of our practice. How we react, not react, how we respond to things is the only thing we have control over. So, live a good life now. If you do, you should be good. If there is an afterlife, you should be okay. I mean, if there is an afterlife, if you live good now, because apparently this afterlife in a lot of faiths is if you do good, you get a good afterlife. And the same is true with us in terms of our karmic wins. If there's no life after death, you should still live that good life because you live good for yourself and others. And I do believe that those who embrace the goodness, the wholesome, are a happier people than the people who do not. And you can see this every day. Dropped my wife off at the airport this morning at 6:45 or 7 o'clock, something like that. And the lines were terrible. And I'm telling you, there were a lot of angry people at the airport. And I flew my whole life. 45 years, I was on a plane every week. And I don't like to fly anymore. It's not a nice place to be. There are a lot of jerks out there flying. And that's judgmental. I shouldn't be judgmental, but I'm not perfect, okay? So sorry about that. Our source of happiness is right now. And our source of happiness is the goodness, this do no harm that the Buddha talks about. And our source of comfort and happiness is our Sangha, is our group, is our friends. And the Buddha, as the third jewel there, he kind of told us all to find out for yourself what's going on. So thus ends the talk.